real history with real emotions and real ambitions and baggage. She writes baggage, emotional trauma very well. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Surprise. I read 23 books. Since I talked to you last, I think we were starting Mad Ship. I think we were reading Mad Ship by Hobb. As you can see, I have changed locations. I'm talking a little bit quieter because in the room over there is a 2-year-old baby. I guess you can't really call him a baby anymore. He's definitely a toddler. We're filming at night right now, so we're going to be a little bit quiet. I'm not going to necessarily be going into a lot of depth on all of these because I don't want to have a 45-minute video here. And I will be continuing my Real Good Books series, so a good portion of these at some point will end up on that series, and we will discuss further about them. I have a lot of these collected by publisher because that's kind of how my brain is working with my libraries lately. We're going to start out here with a couple of books that aren't actually constrained by that publisher restraint. The first two books I'm going to talk about before we get into our publisher groupings are The Painted Bird by Jerzy Kosinski and Hell House by Richard Matheson. Painted Bird, I won't talk about it too much here right now because next episode of Real Good Books will be featuring this as one of them. This is such an excellent book. World War II, I believe. Eastern Europe. It's just a child trying to survive, walking around after his parents are gone through this war-ravaged just a hellscape of a place full of evil people is being taken advantage of. He's being taken in, then taken advantage of, and then kind of handed off to the next people. Nothing goes good for him. It's almost like an Anna Kavan in the sense of like it makes you feel silly for thinking that any good thing can happen to this kid, and it makes you pay for thinking that there is light at the end of any kind of tunnel. And then you get a little bit further into it, and it kind of jumps. We'll talk all about it later. Really, definitely read it. It's very good. I wish I could say that about Hell House by Richard Matheson. This one, I wanted to read it forever, but then I did, and it was a bit of a dud. I'm pretty sure I left a one-line snarky review of it on Goodreads, and I just said, we have Shirley Jackson at home. Now for the groupings. We're going to start here with The Penguins. I read To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. Exceptional book. The character voice is so good in this. Every single character that Virginia Woolf writes, it doesn't feel like a character in a book. It feels like a person ripped out of real life and real history with real emotions and real ambitions and baggage. She writes baggage, emotional trauma very well. We're already going to break the rule here because this next one I read isn't a penguin, but I grouped it in here. This is Sleep Has His House by Anna Kavan. This is essentially just a big grouping of like dream sequences with a small bit of narrative of like half a page in between all of them. Scatterbrained, it's extremely like flow of consciousness. It's entirely like, it's almost entirely dream state. The actual penguin, in this edition, at least that I read it, I reread Ice. And this is my first reread of Anna Kavan. This was my first Anna Kavan. You're following a protagonist who is going after trying to rescue this woman from this other man who is like her protector and or her captor. There is ice. There's like some impending nuclear war going on in the world, political shenanigans that they don't really look into. It's kind of like you look on a TV and you'll see like the news report talking about how bad it is, and then they'll go out of the room and that TV won't be there anymore, so you won't be getting more of like the apocalypse going on outside, really. But there's ice encroaching. Think of the White North Wall, I think it is, in Song of Ice and Fire. But it's like slowly closing in on the world. It's like a top 5 book of all time for me. I love it. It's great. The Last Penguin. Here I have The Mirror of My Heart, 1,000 Years of Persian Poetry by Women. I don't know why I came into this thinking it would be a little more happy. The first 40 or 50 pages are just women talking about how, like, men are incapable of love and just the misogyny and the objectification and unrequited love. There's so much outpouring of love to men, but there's a bleakness to it and an understanding that it is completely unreciprocated. Thankfully, you do see the poetry ease up a little bit from that later on in the book, but for the first part of it, it's basically just like every single one is that, and it was very much a downer. Very good poetry, though. Now we are on to the NYRBs. I have two of them this time, and both of them are absolutely stunning, like 5 out of 5 by now. Excellence. We have The Bewitched Bourgeoisie, The Bewitched Bourgeois by Dino Buzzati. This is an expansive collection. It has 50 of the short stories from his entire career, from the late 1930s, I believe, up into the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s. So in there, the very first story is almost like a proto telling of his novel, The Tartar Steppe. It's written and published 3 years before that book was published, but it has the same character with like it's written a little bit different. It's obviously much shorter. It's like 10 pages instead of 200 pages. But the same character with the same strife, in a different situation and a little bit younger. It was absolutely fascinating to see that. And being that that is essentially an early working of what was my favorite book that I read last year, it was every single thing from there was excellent, and it catapulted me so well into it. So many stories in here are perfect. He is the Italian Kafka, so much so that he wrote a story about how people kept calling him the Italian Kafka. And it's in this book, and it's really good. The last NYRB is The Hearing Trumpet by Leonora Carrington. This is a wacky. Everything Leonora does is wacky. You're following this 90-something, nearly 100-year-old woman who her family is so mad at her for refusing to just die and be done with the world that they send her off to this retirement home. But it turns out the retirement home is owned and operated by like this wellness group, but it's like a wellness death cult almost, and everything spirals so crazy. It's The Hearing Trumpet because she has this trumpet that she holds up to her ear that basically gives her magical hearing powers. She could spy on everybody with it. It's so fun. It's so good. Read it. Absolutely great. We have 2 books from New Directions, and they are both Clarice Lispector. These are the first 2 Clarice Lispector books that I read. Now that I have these 2 books under my belt, I definitely would recommend that you read them in the opposite order that I did, because I started with Agua Viva, and Agua Viva is almost entirely dream logic. It makes no fucking sense. I don't want to say it was a lesser work. It was very hard to understand. I think I'll have a much better time with it when I come back to it and read it for a second time. Now, after that, I read The Passion According to G.H. This is her most famous novel that she has. It's also dreamy. I think I've been told that a lot of pretty much everything that Lispector wrote outside of her chronicas and her nonfiction is pretty dreamy like this. Look forward to seeing how that goes. This is said to have one of the most shocking scenes in all of Brazilian literature. I can see why. Essentially, this woman goes crazy in her bathroom, sees a cockroach, stomps it, eats the cockroach. Spoiler alert. But and it's just this entire sequence. The book is just this sequence of her in the bathroom and dealing with what's going on. Thankfully, it's short because I don't know how well this would work in a very prolonged narrative. I could imagine that this would get a bit tiring if you just had like a 700-page tome of this one story. That might be a lot. I have one open letter book. I read Vertical Moon by San Shu. I think I'm saying that right. This is a collection of short stories by a contemporary Chinese author. It gets kind of into weird fiction, but where I think that this really shines is the depiction of domestic situations and the relationships that go on in domestic environments. It was very good. Like I said, the domestic settings are the thing that absolutely stood out to me the most about this. I have one more poetry book. I read The Collected Songs of Cold Mountain. He was an 8th or 9th century hermit in China. You never really hear people talking the name Cold Mountain very much today. But one thing that I did hear was the Jack Kerouac for the, oh God, I always forget the name of this book, the something boys. I want to say the Baggy Boys, but that's not it. Help me on the comments with that Kerouac book. Kerouac said that the poetry of Cold Mountain was one of his main inspirations that he took going into writing that book. Darny Buns? I think that it's something like that. Every single page has about 3 of the short ones. And every single page, there will be at least one poem that you pick something out of that you want to highlight a line, at least one little part of it. Every single page of the Collected Songs of Cold Mountain has gold in it. Okay, now we're going to talk about the nonfiction books. I read A Cook's Tour by Anthony Bourdain. This was one of my favorite books. This will be one of my favorite books of the year. This is just a book about traveling around the world into different places, looking at their culture, eating the food, drinking the drink, talking with the people. We'll talk all about this in Real Good Books coming up. The same as we will with Monsters in the Archive, my year with Stephen King. I think that's the full title of it. Oh, you could see it here. So the University of Maine, where Stephen taught literature before he went full-time into writing, that university now has a chair called the Stephen E. King Chair of Literature. And the person who filled that is a Shakespeare scholar. The Stephen E. King Chair at the school doesn't actually, there's no real affiliation with Stephen at all really with it. But she, through this, got the opportunity to go to his crazy-ass house, the Bangor, Maine house. You can see it here. And that is where all of the old archives for his old books are at. All the first drafts, the second draft, the third draft, all of the notes, the copy edit notes, because this is back when it's the 70s and the 80s. All of the edits and the ideas had to be written down in the margins from the editor and back to him, and his notes to himself that he wants to do. It's all in there. And they go dissect through the process of how, say, like Carrie goes from an idea to a first draft, and then they talk about the edits that they had to do. They look at the second, third, etc. There's 5. It's the first 5 publications by Stephen that are covered in this. If I read a book that I enjoy more than Monsters in the Archives this entire year, good luck. I read Why We Did It by Tim Miller. Tim Miller is a podcast host. He's a former, he used to work in political campaigns, actually on the Republican side. And he's one of the people who wrote the Republican autopsy, the campaign autopsy after they lost the campaign in 2020. 2012 when Obama got in his second run. And this book is just Tim talking a lot about how like he discovered his sexuality and how what he learned from working campaigns and then what he saw moving into like the current political landscape and how it jostled him around and how they formed the Bulwark News organization out of it. And it's, if you're into it, it's rather exciting. If you're not into that, it's probably horribly boring. I could imagine it would be. I liked it a lot. I read The Language of the Night by Ursula K. Le Guin, and I also read Words Are My Matter by Ursula K. Le Guin. I'll talk about both of these at the same time. These are two books, collections of essays. The Language of the Night covers a lot of her earlier, it covered a lot of her young life. If you want to learn about her activism and her works on like civil rights era activism, you're going to find it in The Language of the Night. As far as Words Are My Matter, this is a bit more broad in what it's doing. It's a bit more all over the place. The edition that I have is, I believe, 20 or so years later. They went and some of the texts, they did a little bit of liner notes in it, updated it. Words Are My Matter. Like if you want to learn about like the house that she grew up in, there's an entire essay on that. Moving on to the science fiction and the fantasy books now. I started this video out by saying how I was, when we spoke last during a reading update, I was reading Mad Ship by Robin Hobb. I finished Mad Ship. I won't really go into plot details. It's book 2 of a 3-book series. Of a, well, much larger series of Realm of the Elderlings. I enjoyed it. I'm not terribly excited to move on to book 3. I'll just leave it at that. I read 2 Philip K. Dick books. I read Ubik, and I read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. I'm beginning to think that Philip K. Dick might be a bit of a Terry Pratchett for me. And when I say that, because it sounds weird to say that, these are both early works from the 60s. They're very good, generally very good. They're wacky, they're zany, they're very funny. Philip K. Dick is actually very funny, and that's one thing I didn't know. I didn't expect coming into it, and it's one of the things that I appreciate most with Philip K. Dick is just how funny he can be. And how randomly, in just this absurd book, he will hit you with a situation that is so like emotionally resonant. It's fascinating. He's really good at that. I read Wolves of the Calla by Stephen King. This is book 5 of the Dark Tower series. I am doing a super extended Dark Tower full series reread with a bunch of other little additions in it. This book, I didn't love it as much on the second go. I still really liked it, but I didn't love it. We're not going to talk about what happens in it all too much because it's book 5 of the 7-book series. Well, technically 8. I read Fiasco by Stanislav Lem. If I'm not mistaken, this was his very last science fiction book that he ever wrote before he retired from science fiction. It is such hard sci-fi, and it's arguably more of a philosophy book even than a science fiction book because he digs so deep into it that it's almost unreadable. It's almost like insufferably dense in how it portrays itself and how it works out. It was definitely a fiasco of a book. I read Chocky by John Wyndham. This is my 3rd John Wyndham, and it is my 3rd favorite. This is a story about a young child who has an imaginary friend. Or is it a real friend? And the entire 120-page novella, is dealing with the kid and looking and wondering, oh, what's really going on here? Figuring it out. I found it kind of boring. I didn't find it all too strong of a narrative, which is interesting because the other two books that I read by John Wyndham, which are The Chrysalids and The Day of the Triffids, those are both like excellent. This one, while it was enjoyable, it almost felt long. When your book is 120 pages long and it feels long, you got something going on there. And last but not least, we have comics and manga. I only have one this time, even though it is kind of a 3-for-1. I finished volume 3 of the deluxe version of Berserk. This covered volumes 7, 8, and 9. This is, I think I can say, my new favorite manga. And anyone who's been here for a while and heard me talking last, I believe it was September, when I read Blood on the Tracks. When talking about that series of manga, I spoke a lot about the sparse dialogue and the attention to art. Berserk is taking the attention to the art, and it's adding more dialogue to it. It won't have like full groups of pages with no dialogue on it, like Blood on the Tracks will, and just tell you an entire storyline essentially through panels of art. This one is almost like the best of both of them because the dialogue is just enough to get the point across while leaving a lot of the art on the page. And the art in this is just so beautiful that you kind of want to stare at it for a long time. The emotional arc is pulling me a bunch. I love every single character in this, even the shitty ones. The monsters are the coolest. The good guys are actually bad guys. The mercenaries are the good guys. It's excellent. It's absolutely excellent. Go ahead and pick it up. That's everything I finished reading. As for what I'm reading right now, I'm reading 2 books right now. I started Nightside the Long Sun by Gene Wolfe. This is the series directly after Book of the New Sun. There's Book of the New Sun, then the Long Sun, and then there's another one that I can't remember after that. I think there's 12 of them in total. I'm 3 chapters into this, so you can see how far I am. I'm not very far at all. Being that I'm only on chapter 3 in this, all I can say is that this is a very good Gene Wolfe book, and I am already thoroughly confused. Which, hello, Gene Wolfe. And the big chunker book that I'm reading is Insomnia by Stephen King. I've been reading Stephen King for over 20 years. I've read probably 50 Stephen King books at this point, and I've had this exact copy of Insomnia sitting on my shelves probably since I was 12 years old. And I'm finally getting to it. I think this came out the year that I was born. I was a year old when this book came out, so I'm happy to be getting to it now. It's following a character named Ralph, who, that's my father's name, so it's kind of funny whenever they're just like, Ralph, get it together. And I'm like, yeah, Dad, hell yeah. But Ralph has insomnia. He's 70 years old. And his insomnia is getting to a point to where he doesn't have any problems ever getting to sleep. He starts waking up, and then it's the wake up time that is getting pushed back and back and back and back and back. Right now, where I'm at in the book, I think he's waking up at like 1:45 in the morning every day. He's getting under 2 hours of sleep, and his entire life is being fucked up for it. There's a bunch of shenanigans going on in the neighborhood as he's like staring out the window at 2 in the morning looking to see what the hell's going on. It's extremely political. It is extremely political. That's one thing that I will say. People say that Stephen King nowadays is too political for them or whatever, but he's always been like that. And this is a case and point of exactly what is going on with that. It's very good. Is it my favorite Stephen King? I can definitively say that it will not be top 10. I highly doubt it, but is it a good book? I'm enjoying my time thoroughly. Stephen King's author voice is a big snuggly blanket for me. I feel like home whenever I'm reading these, so I'm definitely enjoying it. While it may be a bit more, I think it may be one of his more mundane novels that I have read, but I'm only 36% of the way in. We will see. As far as what I am reading next, I am going to continue on with Gene Wolfe's Book of the Long Sun with Volume 2, which is Lake of the Long Sun. And once I finish Insomnia, my plan is to start Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Erickson. My very first Malazan Book of the Fallen book. People say it's confusing. I think Gene Wolfe is gonna get me ready pretty good for that. Let me know what you guys are reading down in the comments. Cheers.